ThekarmicDF.
What is up, guys? It's your girl, the Karmic DF from TikTok, back to you again with another video. This time we're going to cover the relationship don'ts. So if you are talking to someone new, if you are about ready to get out there, if you're already in a relationship but there's some sort of conflict and you're not really seeing eye to eye, if you're in a long-term relationship and again the communication's not fully there, you're not getting your needs met, and you're trying to figure out what it is that why can't we like I just keep seeing like magnets that can't touch. It's like, why can't we communicate? Why can't we understand each other? So if this is something that you've had a problem with, if this is something that you want to stop having a problem with, whether it's fixing a relationship that you're currently in, or maybe it's learning that the relationship you're in might be past its expiration date, but more so we're going to be focused on the don'ts of relationships so that we can have a relationship that will actually stand the test of time. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you want to be happy and in love and not sabotaging or not being with someone who's going to sabotage it, then this is the video for you. As always, please like these videos. It is a great way to show support. Subscribe if you enjoyed these videos. Hit that notification bell if you want to see more of my videos. And as always, let's get into it. So the first and biggest mistake that we do, and guilty as charged, so again, I would never give advice that I haven't been through, gone through, written the book about now, but we tend to put people on pedestals that they don't deserve, because no one deserves to really be on a pedestal, because we are all humans and we are all going through our own stuff. We're all learning, we're all trying to evolve. And the first way that we fail ourselves and we fail our relationships is by glorifying who that person is. Now, that's not to say that you can't love and adore the person that you're with and have these wonderful feelings, but don't put them above yourself. Because think about it, there's how many people in the world, and that person chose you, right? They want to pursue things with you, or they're already in a relationship with you. Either way, their focus is on you. So the moment that you think that they're above you is the moment that you're setting yourself up for immediate failure. So I'll give you an example of one that I've done, and then I'll give you an example of one that might really apply more to men, but you'll see how this happens. So I dated someone, I wouldn't even call it dating, but I talked to someone-ish, and we'll call them Bob. And so Bob was really driven, like super driven, and I admired the hell out of that. And that was at a time where I wasn't fully in that place in my life yet, and so I really admired who they were, what they were climbing towards. And so I put them on a really high pedestal, because I was like, wow, like, why do they like me? Why are they talking to me? Like, I don't have anything to offer them. Like, I'm not this big person making big waves in the world. What? And you already see where I'm screwing up. We have to realize that, again, going back to I chose you, you chose me, and leave it at that and just see where it unfolds. But instead of doing that, I had to understand why this person chose me. Why would you choose me? What's wrong with you that makes you choose me? I'm broken. You don't see that I'm broken. And that is its own video, because no one's actually broken. We just have trauma we got to work through. But I was projecting that he was this grandiose, amazing man because he was so driven with his dreams and ambitions. And what I wasn't actually noticing was I was inspired by that, because that was who I wanted to be. But instead of taking that as, oh, that's who I want to be, that's how I want to be, and I should learn through that person, what I did was I made myself feel even smaller, and then I tried real hard to make him see my worth, when in reality, like, he already kind of picked me. And so I sabotaged that by putting him on a pedestal he didn't deserve. And he's human, like, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but I didn't see my own worth, and so I immediately felt like I was smaller, and then I felt like I needed to prove myself when I didn't need to prove myself. And then if you're with someone or talking to someone that can sense that, then they're kind of going to steamroll all over you, because they already know they've got you. And that's where this like tug and pull of like who's in power, who's in charge is so unhealthy and not a good dynamic. But that was one of the big ones that I was doing, is I had really low self-esteem. And so when someone decided that they liked me, part of me would go, what's wrong with you that you would choose me? You know what my issues are, because even though I had issues, I was very open about who I was, because I I don't correlate shame with my past. Like, the only way to beat your past is to be honest and open about it and heal from it. But what I did was I put this person on a pedestal, and I thought that they were better than me because they were better in a category of life that I was still trying to chase after. And with that comparison led to an inevitable downfall. An issue that I've also had, but this was more like, it wasn't my projection, it was how men have kind of screwed up with me. So if you're a man watching this, this might be helpful, so listen up. I have a thing for dad bods. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what it is. There's something like I'm a cuddle bug. I love me some cuddles. And so I'm really, I'm not against a guy that goes to the gym 24/7, but I mean, if two amazing men were like at my feet and one of them had a ripped six pack and one of them had like a beer gut, I'm going to choose the guy with the beer gut because that's my taste. But the problem with that is I clearly take care of myself, right? And so this is how men have projected onto me, where it's like, well, why does she want to be with me? She looks good by, societal standards. She takes care of herself. All I do is sit on the couch, yada, yada. And so there's that self-esteem and self-worth issue coming out again, rearing its ugly head. And a lot of guys that I used to choose back in the day, and would still choose a dad bod over it, but whatever, that's not the point. They would see me choosing them as, what's wrong with you? And it's, again, us over-analyzing things. We have to just take it as black and white, which most of our lives are actually in the gray area, but I don't want to get into that right now. If someone chose you, listen to them and just go with the flow. Don't over-analyze things. Just because someone that maybe you think is better looking than you chose you doesn't necessarily mean that they're up to no good. They want to hurt you or use you. But a big one is men like to think that their worth is equated to money. And so if a man has self-esteem issues and they also don't have money, and society, forces like, you can't, unless you're a provider, you're worthless to men, which is disgusting, then they're going to wonder why you want them if they're not completely fulfilled in their own lives. And this is what's occurring on a grand scale, is we're all doing this. We're all going, why did you pick me? What is it? Because we see our own flaws, right? We are hardest on ourselves. Like, no one can be meaner to ourselves than ourselves, because we see the real versions of us. We see all sides of us. And when we get into a relationship with someone else, they haven't seen all sides of us. We know what we got going on, but they haven't seen it yet. And so then we overanalyze and we nitpick things. But what we need to remember is, just like we aren't perfect and we have our own shit going on, so doesn't that person that we chose. And if we can be more just open and understanding that everybody has their own shit, and stop projecting our wounds onto other people where we feel like we're not enough, so then we have to like overanalyze what's going on with them, then we are doomed to fail in that relationship that either we're trying to get or that we're already in. We have to stop romanticizing people and putting this, like, how do I word this, Spirit? Like thinking 20 steps ahead, like you meet this person, you think they're great, you haven't really talked to them all that long, but now you're there like, oh my God, I can't imagine like our wedding day, like, oh, we'd be so perfect together. And I'm so freaking guilty of this. Oh my God, rom-coms galore in my life. So I'm very guilty of this, but I've worked on it. But when we do that, we set ourselves up for failure, and we set our partners up for failure because we don't know what they're going through. And then we're projecting this lifestyle of like, oh my God, this is what I want. We're thinking 20 steps ahead. That puts pressure on that person. Then they feel the pressure. Then they get overwhelmed. And that's when we see the dynamic of emotionally avoidant with anxious attachment disorders. That's why these two are so attached to one another. It's because they are meant to even each other out. There are people out there that you will attract if you are too hungry for love, that are too afraid of love, and they will run every time, because it's meant to teach you that you are overdoing it, or on the flip side, you are too afraid, and it's meant to show you that love is not necessarily dangerous. It's just that you've had bad ones in the past. And so relationships are meant to teach you about yourself. And if you are not taking advantage of that, then you are going to, unfortunately, keep continuing with these cycles of projecting, of the lack of communication, which we'll get into, and then ultimately watching that relationship burn to the ground because we have been focusing on what could be, what might be, instead of what is right in front of us, right here, right now. Communication is such a big one, and this is the one that destroys probably most relationships. Granted, a lot of relationships are meant to be chapters, because obviously we can't end up with everybody we're supposed to date, because they teach us about ourselves so that we can learn and be right for the person who's right for us. But I see this with so many people in relationships where, and I'm guilty of it too, there might have been 1 or 2 relationships where like they could have been salvaged if I had communicated better, but things are meant to happen as they're meant to happen. But the problem is, especially because I know I have a predominantly female audience, but we're all kind of guilty of it, we tend to hold back what we're feeling inside because we're afraid of what their response is going to be. So if we're, triggered by something, if we feel like our needs aren't being met, that's a very big one. We won't necessarily tell them right away until either we've reached a breaking point, or you do the worst part, which is not tell them at all and then just kind of toss them to the side. We have been taught as a society, especially through childhood, to, be seen, not heard. And so we don't like conflict. We don't like, and especially we don't like to have the hard talks, because our intuition might be telling us that the hard talk is going to lead us to the answer we don't want to hear, which might just be that this relationship is not what you need. But it's 50-50 on that one, because there are so many people that are afraid of communication and I've seen relationships in my own life that have worked out a little bit longer, at least, because I actually got comfortable with being uncomfortable and speaking my truth. I see a lot of women, and I was one of them, where you will go to your friends to say, hey, my man is not understanding that I need him to answer my text, or else I'd feel insecure, and he's not getting that, I need him to show up for me, and this and that, whatever it is that's your trigger, exactly your trigger. And you're going to everyone but your spouse or that person that you have interest in to tell them what it is that's going on in you, what it is that you're having trouble communicating. I know that it's scary, and I'm immediately hearing from spirit, like, what was it? I missed it. Until you're speak, even though your voice shakes, whatever that saying is. I'm butchering it because I'm not trying to channel right now. But it's that fear of, well, if I speak my truth, will this end the relationship? And if your truth is what's going to end the relationship, then you don't need them anyway. What you need is someone who can understand and meet you halfway. And if you're not communicating your needs, another thing, women especially, men are not mind readers, and men are a little bit more black and white than we are. We are kind of more, we're naturally more intuitive because we're feminine energy. And so we kind of just assume that the man will be able to read the room, but a lot of times they just don't read the room. And then you get mad, and then you build it up, and then you become passive aggressive, and then it builds and builds and builds, and then you start flipping out at them about stupid things like the dishes, when in reality you're mad at them from something about 6 months ago that you didn't even tell them about because you went to your friends. And now you're screaming at them, and that's not an open area to have communication. And so now you're in a place where they're going to be defensive because, 1, they didn't even know because you did not communicate it. And 2, now you're attacking them instead of giving them a free space to have open communication so that they can meet your needs. If someone came at you like, you're doing this and you're doing that, you're going to immediately get defensive. It's nature. But if you were to go and be like, hey, babe, can we just talk about something? I'm feeling pretty insecure right now. It could be a trigger of mine. It could be, an old trauma, but it would make me feel better personally if you could just text me goodnight when you're going to sleep. It would make me feel a little bit better if you could just communicate to me that you're just going out with the boys and that you're safe, and that would make me feel better. If we learn to just speak our truth and get used to that, even though it's uncomfortable, we can avoid all those big blowouts that never needed to happen, and all of the breakups that were the breakdown of communication that we never actually had to begin with. Again, people are not mind readers, and I see it very often with especially women, because that's who I predominantly work with, where they'll be really angry at their spouse or someone they're interested in, but they're not telling that person why they're angry to begin with. They push aside. They're like, oh, they're not going to get it. Oh, they're not going to understand. They're not going to. Well, you're assuming. So how are they going to learn if you're assuming? And then you're assuming, which makes them have to assume because you're not communicating. So then by default, they're going to have to assume too. Do you see how this cycle spirals downwards? You can't assume, you have to communicate, even if it's uncomfortable, because that will get you to what you need to know, which is one of two things: that they can hear you and adjust to meet your needs, or, 1-B, your needs might be a little, because sometimes our needs are the result of our traumas, and that's something that we need to learn about ourselves. So like, for instance, if your need is that, he hasn't talked to me in 2 hours, but he's driving around, he's running errands, he's got things to do. That's kind of a you issue, and he might have to point that out to you, and you might have to take the L and realize, oh, that is a me issue. I need to realize that I'm a little bit codependent. I'm a little bit triggered by this. And I need to take a step back to now learn about myself and what is this telling me? Where is this coming from? This is the main thing that I want you to get out of this video, if nothing else. When we let our pride run the relationship, because that's a big one too, where we're just like, you know what, fine, screw it, screw you, I'm done, that's it, I'm good. And you screwed up something that could have been amazing because you'd rather be prideful than actually be vulnerable. That's where we screw up very often. And then we wonder why we lose what could have been good things. But in reality, it has a lot to do with the fact that we have trauma from past relationships that we are kind of putting onto our current partners or the person that we're trying to talk to next. And it's not them, it's the past. And it's an opportunity for us to learn about ourselves, our needs, where we were hurt in the past, what needs to be healed. And if you can reframe in your mind how you see relationships and the triggers that come with them, it's actually a really great opportunity for you to be able to heal. But more often than not, in these relationships, what ends up happening is we have this breakdown, then we break up, and then we go, oh, and then we learn, right? But if you're in a relationship or if you're talking to someone that has the potential to be amazing, has the potential to be what you want and what you need, then you have to learn that these triggers are telling you about yourself. You have to bring it back inwards. If someone is clearly disrespecting you, then that's completely different. But if something is going off for you, like for instance, because I see this in female support groups, and if a man is watching this, mad respect, I got your back. But like, a girl will post and she's like, I haven't heard from my man in like 8 hours. What do I do? And the amount of dump hims in the comment section. You don't know anything about the situation. You have no idea what's going on. And your immediate thought was, oh, he doesn't respect you, yada, yada, yada. First of all, having social media at our fingertips has already screwed up relationships so bad, because you shouldn't have 24/7 access to a human being, period. I personally have most of my notifications off because I work through social media, and therefore it's too much. It's overwhelming for me. And a lot of people got real freaking mad when I didn't answer them right away, because we got used to people being at our fingertips at all times. And so now we have this generation of thinking that we are entitled to everyone's time, and that's not the case at all. And we assume, and then we project, and then we screw up good things because of a wound from the past. Because maybe you did have an ex, because I can speak on this on my behalf, that their phone died, right? Their phone died, but they were actually out cheating. Yeah, I've been there, girl, I've been there. But that's not everyone. That's not every guy. That's not every relationship. You have to go in with an open mind. And when those things come up for you, you need to look at it as, what is this telling me about myself? And if it's not telling me about myself, then it's telling me that I need to have a conversation with this person. Those are one of the two things that is really going on. It really breaks down to those two things. When you get triggered, what is it telling you? Is it telling you, hey, this is reminding me of an ex that ignored my text because they were out cheating, and I have a wound around cheating, and now I think they're cheating. And so now step 2 is you need to talk to them and tell them in a way that's non-attacking, hey, this is a wound from my past. I feel, don't go with you're doing, go with I feel. And then they will either, hear you out and adjust so that both people are happy, or they'll tell on themselves and they're not going to be who you need them to be. But either way, without communicating what's going on inside of your head in a way that is non-attacking, you are not going to get your needs met. You're going to have that buildup of anger and resentment, and then it's all going to go crumbling down. And then at the end of that, who's really to blame but ourselves. So to wrap this up, what it really boils down to is at the beginning, when we're starting to see someone, we tend to put them on pedestals and then we wonder why they're with us. And more often than not, both people are doing it. I swear to God, it's both people. So while you're sitting here putting someone on a pedestal because of the things that you like about them, they're sitting there putting a pedestal on things they like about you. So if we can stop doing that and just see them as human beings that we are really excited to get to know, to be a part of their life, or if you're already in it, then that they're human, you already know who they are, just take them off the pedestal, they're an equal, then go with that and stop projecting. Stop assuming and stop being quiet when the hard conversations need to be had, because that will tell you everything you need to know. If they can't handle the communication, then there's your answer. But sometimes, and I see it pretty often with people that are in relationships that should not be going on anymore, you're not having that conversation because you know how it's going to go. And I'm not trying to focus on relationships that are doomed here, but I have to throw this in here, that if something's telling you that you can't have that conversation, it's probably due to the fact that they're more than likely not going to give you the answer that you want, and that's what you're trying to avoid, and we need to stop doing that. We have to have the hard talks. We have to be vulnerable and honest and share our hearts and stop letting the past dictate how we're going to see our relationships now. We have to be the most authentic version of ourselves and just take everything one day at a time. If you're feeling the love, then share that love. If they don't give it back to you, at least you shared that love, But if you're not living authentically to yourself, you're hurting yourself. Send that text that you love that person if you love that person. Be vulnerable and tell them that you care. Tell them that you see a future with them if you're not, being a little too romanticizing, but if you truly care about them and that's how you're feeling, say how you feel. I'm literally hearing the song John Mayer's Say What You Need to Say. It really is that simple. But because we've been taught, and it's probably a childhood wound or maybe a very significant relationship that made you feel like you couldn't speak your truth anymore, we need to realize that every trigger is an opportunity to learn about ourselves. And once we can realize that it comes back to us, that's when we learn about ourselves. That's when we learn how to heal. And if that person ain't our person, then at least we've learned. At least we've learned what we need. At least we've learned how to effectively communicate, even if that person couldn't. But it's up to us. And if we aren't doing our side, then it is going to fail. Both people need to show up authentically. Both people need to not let their past hurt the present. Both people need to just be honest. And we're not used to that in this society because we're used to putting masks on and trying to fit in and trying to make everybody else comfortable. But we're not used to making ourselves comfortable. We're not used to prioritizing our own needs. And so this is why this cycle repeats and repeats and repeats until we're like, all right, I don't even want to date anymore. I'm good. I'm done. We just keep getting the same shit, right? But in reality, the reason we keep getting the same stuff is because we are also not changing. And so if you are afraid to speak your truth, then you're going to keep getting people that are going to trigger you until you eventually speak your truth. So don't let it get to the point of when you've reached your breaking point. Let it be the moment that you feel that you need to speak your truth. If they're not meeting your needs, you have to have an open conversation, open dialogue without attacking them. If you are putting someone on a pedestal because you're romanticizing it, you have to also bring yourself back down to earth. Remember that they're human, that they have their own stuff going on. If that person chose you, remember that and keep that in your mind to keep yourself sane. Did they choose you? Did they want to see what could happen with you? Then there's your answer. So what do we do with that information next? We let it develop, let it grow. I'm seeing like a flower blossom. Let it grow, see what happens. And as we move along in the relationship and as those triggers come up in the surface, we have to go inwards to understand more about ourselves instead of just projecting it onto that other person. Our shit is not other people's problems and vice versa. And the moment we can learn that, the moment we can communicate, the moment we can have more healthy, effective, beneficial relationships, that we actually want to be in. But it starts with working on yourself. It starts with being honest with yourself. It starts with learning to love yourself, building up that self-esteem. If you're being triggered because you think that person's better than you, instead of attacking, ask why it is you think they're better, and then you'll learn what it is that you don't like about yourself. And then you could go, oh, I don't like this about myself. So then how do I work on changing it? Stop trying to fix and change other people and start realizing that it's teaching you about yourself. And when you can fix yourself, learn to love yourself, then it's just a matter of time until you meet the right person, and hopefully they're willing to do the same, to learn and grow and not project and not continue that cycle. But it's up to you to make the change that you want to see in these relationships. Be honest with yourself and be honest with that person you're trying to grow with. And if you can do that, then you will likely get what you want out of it. Or you'll realize that you might have outgrown each other, or you're not compatible. But in the end, don't you want the truth anyway? Or do you want to be one of those many relationships that drag it out for years on years on years? Again, been there, just for it to ultimately fail anyway. Be honest with yourself, be honest with your needs, be honest with your triggers, and be honest with your spouse as you're going through those triggers. Hey, I'm sad today. I got triggered by something. This is how I'm feeling. Make it about you again and see their response. If they're a good person, they're going to try and be there for you. They're going to talk to you. They're going to want to help you. And if they brush over how you're feeling, then they're telling you who they are, and you don't need them anyway. You need someone who's going to show up for you, and you need to learn how to be vulnerable at the same time so that they can show up for you. It's a two-way street. You're both human beings trying to create something together, and triggers are going to come up. That's natural. That's part of life. But it's up to you what you're going to do with those. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you guys want a part 2 on this, let me know down in the comments. But I feel like this one's pretty simple. It really comes down to pride, communication, romanticizing, putting people on pedestals, and stop doing all of that and just realize that you are two people that are flawed but still trying to grow, and maybe you want to grow together, and that's a beautiful thing. Focus on that, and when shit comes up, talk to one another. And if it doesn't even need to be talked about because it's your own trigger, then go within and work on it on yourself. And then you can be proud of yourself for realizing where it came from to begin with, instead of avoiding it, pushing it back, and then projecting it onto someone who doesn't deserve it and screwing up a potentially good thing. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this was helpful. I hope this wasn't attacking. There's nothing in this video that I've said that I haven't done myself. So, I'm calling myself out in this video as well. But I hope this was helpful. I will see you guys in my next video. I love you guys so much. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, babes. Love you guys.